rattled me. This is the best I could do. Um, all right, you ready?
All right, I'm going to count you down. 3, 2, 1. Joe, you go ahead and kick it off. And I'm going to mute me after I do that. And let me know if you need anything. You ready?
Got it.
3, 2, 1.
Hello, Florida. This is Joe Mullins of the Live Workshop Play Show. And good morning. Good morning to Orlando, all the way to Daytona Beach. Some of the most beautiful shores that we have, and one of the busiest cities in the country for tourism, Orlando, Lake. Uh-oh. Can we stop that? Thank you. You messed up the whole show, Pastor Jay. All right, we're going to start over again.
I'm sorry, Candy.
All right, hold on. Let's pause for just a second. Okay, so Paul, you're who is on Google Meet, correct?
I'm actually on my phone.
Okay, that works. Can you please mute yours, or just make sure to be very quiet, because it will pick up anything that you say. If you breathe heavy, any of that, it'll pick up as well.
Yes, I will be glad to mute it. I did. I had obviously a text came in and I heard it go ding, so I said, "Uh-oh," and so I just turned off.
So it wasn't just me, Joe.
It was totally you. You cut on a whole TV channel.
Not a problem.
All right, we're ready.
Are you guys ready there in the studio?
Let's get it. And Paul, I'll cue you when I'm going to you, okay? All right.
Okay, sounds great.
Let's go ahead, guys,
and
go.
Off again?
Hello, Florida. This is Joe Mullins of the Live Workshop Play Show, and good morning and welcome. You know, it's a beautiful day here in Florida. We have had one of the most incredible summers. Orlando, it has been amazingly busy. I want to say hello to all our Orlando listeners and the tourists that come in and then go back to wherever they come from. You know, we have hit over 2 million listeners, and I want to thank you all for tuning in when you come to Orlando and then taking it back with you. You can go to the Flagler Broadcasting app. You can download it on your smartphone, and then you can listen to WNZF in podcast or WRL. With Orlando, you can download their app, and you can podcast and listen to the show. Also want you to go to the Facebook page, Live Workshop Play Florida, and like that page. Lots of updates. We're giving away tickets. We're giving away a lot of different things. We also have some great shows coming up, and we're very excited in the Orlando, the Jacksonville, the St. Augustine, and the Daytona and Flagler area. But I also want to say good morning to our listeners in Seminole County. I want to move on over to Volusia County. We've got a lot of listeners over there that tune in and listen to WNZF and WORL. Then I also want to go up to our Flagler County, our beautiful county where we originated and started this show just 2 years ago. What a great run it's been. And I want to thank the listeners of Flagler. And then move on up to St. John's, which is Beach 105.5. You can listen to it live there on Saturdays and Sundays. You also can listen to WBOB Jacksonville, and that one is Saturdays as well, Saturday mornings. And if you go online, you can look and see when these shows air. There's so many different times that these network and affiliates do. But we're very proud, and we're growing even more. We're going to be pushing towards Tampa here soon, and then looking at 2,000 stations across the country. But you know what? More than anything, I want to focus on Florida. I want to say it has been a phenomenal summer. I've seen a lot of people in Daytona have a great time at the beach. Flagler Beach, it's been phenomenal. Although they're kind of a little confused out there how they're running things. One day they want tourism, one day they don't, one day they do. But it's been a little crazy. But Hammock Beach, which is beautiful, is where I reside, the most beautiful place in the state of Florida, Hammock Beach. St. Augustine, what a great, beautiful city. Lots of good restaurants, lots of people up there. And then you cannot go without saying Jacksonville. I'm getting very excited because when school starts, guess what comes right after? Duval. The Jaguars, we're going to see how they do this year, and I'm looking forward to that. But, you know, it's been an incredible summer. But guess what, kids? If the kids are listening, I got to tell you, it's time to start school back. No, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. Pastor Jay.
Yes.
She's with me today.
I'm ready.
Pastor
I'm ready.
Jay,
And
are you ready for school to start?
I always have my annual back to school giveaway, which is on August the 12th. So I'm giving away free school
You're going to be
supplies.
giving away kids?
No, I'm giving away
I don't
free
want
school
one.
supplies.
I got enough.
Free school supplies, backpacks, the whole works.
I've got some great people joining us today. I've got our Flagler County School Board member, Will Furry.
The Honorable Will Furry.
Will, thank you for coming in, and it's a pleasure. I'm a big fan of yours, and love seeing you run. And you've done some great things inside the school board. You've really uncovered a lot of craziness that we've seen from them just running. And, a lot of that, I think, is from people being in school boards way too long, this liberal movement. People are coming down here. They're switching their titles to saying they're conservative Republicans. But then they get in there, and we've got a few that ran as Republicans, and they are some of the most biggest disgrace to conservative values. And I tell you, I don't want my kids around them. I wouldn't trust them 5 minutes with my kids. There's a couple that you serve there with that really need to go. One of them's been on there a lifetime. I mean, looks like she's 102 now and been on it. And then the other's been very recently, and she claims she's conservative, but she has voted for everything that defies conservative values. But we've got our kids coming back, and we've got a lot of legislation, Will, that we're seeing come up that we want to discuss today. Also, I have the one and only Paul Deering, who is the chair of the Republican Executive Committee of Volusia County. Paul is a very good friend of mine, and he is a true patriot. That man will fight for your kids. He'll fight for your values. He'll fight for your morals. And Paul, I want to welcome you on the show today as well.
Thank you, Joe. It's great to be with you.
It is so good to have you, and I want you to give a few updates of what's coming up this year for the Republican Executive Club, because I know a lot of parents want to get more involved and they want to get more engaged. So that's what we want to be able to talk about, and then we want to talk about some of this newest legislation. So, Pastor Jay, it's been kind of crazy. It's been crazy. But it's been crazy what we're seeing happen and going on. Candy, you just recently were searching the news. Candy is our producer. She was searching the news, and you saw some really, really strong legislation coming in this year to schools when they start. What did you uncover?
So some of the things that I was looking at was, they've passed some laws, like one law bans teachers from classroom instruction on gender identity or sexual orientation after 8th grade. It says that brings the rules in line with an expansion of the parental rights in education law that was also approved by state lawmakers this year. Teachers are not allowed to use a student's preferred pronoun if that pronoun is different from their sex. Teachers may not use a name that's different than the child's given name without parental permission. And then others have to do with requiring people go to the bathroom of their gender. So either exclusively male, female, or they said they can do unisex as long as it's designated for just one person. But as far as locker rooms and those types of things, you have to go to the one that matches your birth assignment. We'll put it that way.
This is some crazy stuff, Will, that we're seeing come into schools. Pastor Jay, you've been a mother. You've been fighting this. I want to ask y'all, and I want y'all to kind of dialogue and talk. What is going on? I'm sending my kids to get education, not indoctring. Not indoctrination. Doctrination. I can't even say the word. I get so riled up. I'm sending them there to not misconfuse and unlearn everything they learn on Sundays. But what is going on in our school systems? I mean, do we really have the issue of waking up and not knowing if we're a boy or a girl, if we go to a bathroom and sit or stand? Or if I'll tell you, I'll be very clear, and I've said this before, if I ever catch a man going in the bathroom with my daughters, or my daughter, or my child, or something like that, they're going to be missing some teeth. I'm going to show them who the tooth fairy is, and it's going to be me. But right. You guys, what is going on in the school systems? And Will, I want to hear from you, kind of what you've gotten in and fought, and then also Paul Deering, how they fought as a club and organization.
We'll talk about how it started, and this started way before time. But when it really started coming into fruition was right after the 2020 election. Am I right, Paul? When Biden got in office, he started putting everything under Title IX when it came to schools and all this other kind of stuff. The restrooms was open up here in Flagler County, and not just in Flagler County, but all across the nation, the state and the nation, that restrooms were just being opened up. People could go into another restroom regardless of what they were, as they're calling it, assigned at birth. We know that there are only two genders, but according to the radical, the left, there's over 100 different genders, and it started opening up. But really, the Biden administration started coming from there, started putting stuff and instituting stuff, which caused individual states to have to fight back. And that's what Governor DeSantis has done here in Florida. He has started to fight back. We've had different legislation come through here.
Yeah, and a lot of this was just was common sense before. I mean, growing up in
Yeah.
school, there was never any debate on whether sexuality should be spoken or taught to a child, especially in the younger grades. But the culture has changed a bit in public education across the country, and it really depends on the state that you're in right now, and their vision of education, right? And our great governor, who I was grateful to receive his endorsement during the campaign, and our speaker, Paul Renner, and the rest of the Congress up there, brought some great legislation down to support school board members. Before, we had just policy, right? And policy is great, and it has worked for a long time. But when somebody decides to break policy, they're the repercussion is, they could potentially lose their job. There's different remedies to that. But what the governor passed down are laws with teeth, right? And for that was important to parents, because they didn't want the morals and values of the DC electorate coming down from there, or whether it be from individuals here that want to promote a certain sexuality in schools, imposed on their children. And this is, again, something that we would normally just say that we don't even need a law for this. Right.
And Paul, this is something that you and I have been heavily involved in with legislation, and we've seen a lot of legislation come down through the ranks. And what have you had to deal with in Volusia County and all the surrounding areas with fighting for that and making sure we have candidates that's going to support what we call common sense legislation? We've had to enact laws, and bills have had to come forth that we normally wouldn't even think about. Come on, use the restroom of your gender.
Yeah, we've been in Volusia, I want to say, blessed right now. We have, I want to say, a majority of the school board sees through that, and they see what the governor had encouraged and the House and Senate to pass, which they did, and he signed into legislation. But keep in mind that these kinds of I want to say, the small minority of people who are looking to further their agenda at the expense of traditional values here in our counties and across the state and really across America. At the end of the day, this is part of what I consider strongly, because I've read the book called, if you haven't read the book, it's called Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky. And in that book, and the book is 50 years old, but it looks to change America. And it basically changed the structures, the institutions, the people groups, and pit them one against another. This is just, I want to say, one of the many things. It's kind of like somebody sat and kind of contemplated, how can we really destroy the fabric of the United States, because we want them to be part of this one world government that's moving on. And I don't mean to get into a lot of conspiracy stuff, but at the end of the day, it fits from this stuff going back 50 years ago. And so this is part of that, where they're pitting people, and that's what really this is all about, pitting people, parents, against, in some cases, school teachers, but really they're just following, in many instances, they're following a syllabus that's been brought in, and I think that's going out the window. But because a lot of teachers are against it, because I want to say, our school teachers are not all in favor of the stuff that's trying to be crammed down parents' throats, and that's the good news. So at the end of the day, we've got people here that in Volusia that get the picture and don't want that any more than you and I do. So that's the good news.
Well, here's the problem that I believe that we're having. Most parents and those in the community didn't even realize that there was a problem, right? We've always taken, parental rights as a God-given right. Why do we need to fight for parental rights? Last year was a whole big uproar, the Don't Say Gay bill, which I've always called it the Don't Say Heterosexual bill, because really the bill said, let's just not talk about it. And this year, those rights were expanded upon, right? So, Will, being on the school board, what kind of issues did you have with people coming up talking about, well, what do you mean don't say gay? Are you prejudice against gay people, or what were the issues you were having?
Well, what it really comes down to, regardless of what people say, is, you know, the morals and values between are to come between a parent and a child, right? It's not for the school's role to instill morals and values on a child, right? And I think that parents want that protected. Like you said, it shouldn't have to be something that's protected. It should be something that should just be the way that it is. But apparently, it's not. And I'm not singling out Flagler County specifically as having a serious issue here, but it exists in many districts across the country and our state, right? And we're not immune to it. And so again, we're tasked with educating your children.
Let's get back to that.
That's what we're gonna get back
reading,
to.
writing, and arithmetic.
Right.
Not things like sexual orientation, gender identity. God, I understand we have these reproductive health classes they've had for years, but a permission slip has been signed.
Right.
What has been happening in schools throughout the nation is students have been able to go in and say, I was born a girl, but I prefer to be a boy. Call me John. Call me something else. And schools have been getting behind that philosophy, have not been informing the parents. So it has been taking people like Governor DeSantis to stand up and say no more. And when you look at transgender neighborhood, nothing against them, they're like 0.04% of the nation. And they've been falling out and just going on and saying all kinds of things that we're against them. We're not against anyone. What we are for is the parental rights to protect the children. That's it. That's
Right.
it.
And it's unacceptable for
Amen.
For a teacher or any school faculty to help a child along in these type of scenarios that could lead to life-changing, unreversible procedures in some cases, right? Without the parents knowing, and that's just not okay. And so, you know, in Florida, that's not going to be possible.
Well, this is what's happening in other states, Paul, and I'm sure you've seen it in places like California. Michigan, for example, in the state of Michigan, children can get transgender surgery and the state pays for it. Adults get transgender surgery and they pay for it. There are other places like California and places throughout the nation that they are coaching students into claiming or gathering another gender identity without the parental permission, without even informing them. And if a parent steps in, I spoke with a parent in Washington State, if you step in and say, I'm not for that, they turn you into Child Protective Services saying that you're not supporting your child. Paul, I don't know where we're going to go with this because this is a national crisis. This is a national problem and it's happening everywhere.
Yeah. Well,
I think,
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, just in response to that, Geraldine, the fact is that it's really a common sense element. Granted, not everybody has what you and I might consider common sense, but I want to say the majority of Americans do. And at the end of the day, the common sense part is what seems to be missing in all of the logic that they, or supposed logic that they try to bring forth. And at the end of the day, most of us don't like it, but most of us are quiet. We're not the people that want to be outspoken and engage in conflict. So most Americans are quiet about it. But when, in this particular case, the governor came up with this and basically got the support, and certainly the citizens, I believe, across the state are on the same page. And as parents, they want to be able to have their kids not be, as you said earlier, indoctrinated. And that's what this stuff is. It's indoctrination against family values.
For those who are listening and you're not a parent, maybe your children are grown, you say this does not apply to you. It applies to you. It affects you. All of us are stakeholders in the education of every child in this community because they're going to grow up. They're going to be the ones that's going to be the teachers, the firemen, the police officers. They're going to be the ones taking care of you when you're in the nursing home. And there's been another thing that's been expanding, not just with gender identity, but students identifying as cats and identifying as squirrels. And you're going, this doesn't happen. It absolutely happened. We have children all across the state of Florida and in other states throughout the nation wearing dog collars because they're identifying as puppies and all different types of things. So when you think it don't apply to you and you're sitting in the nursing home at 85, 90 years old and your nurse comes in and you say you need to use the restroom and they bring out a cat litter box, don't call me or call Joe and say stuff like, oh, I didn't know that was going to happen. And they meow at you when you request dinner or lunch.
Well, one of the things that I've noticed too is the Main Street media is attacking people like Paul, who's working with the Republican Executive Club, Will, who's fighting for morals and values. And really, what I respect with Will, he's not in there trying to say, hey, your kids need to look at this religion, your kids need to do that.
No.
He's in there fighting and saying, listen, our kids need to have an education. They need to learn what is right. And that's what I love about you. But then you get these bloggers and these crazy people. Just recently we seen fraud in the Flagler County School, potential fraud that we're looking at. And yet it was by the blogger and his wife, and he's not talking about this story. And I sit there and think their excuse was well, we weren't trained properly. And I think, man, if I'm me being a commissioner and you being a school board member, can you imagine looking up and giving an excuse of, well, I wasn't trained right. That's why I used that checkbook and started paying all my personal
But here's
stuff.
the thing,
I mean, it's,
Joe. As a conservative, the conservative view has always been that's your child. You be the parent of that child. How
Yes,
you
but
raise your child is how you raise
what
your
I'm
child.
saying is it's not Republican against Democrat. It's morals and values, and it's media and liberals attacking the conservatives. And if we voice our opinion, like Paul was saying, if we voice our opinion, we're attacked personally. Our businesses are attacked. It's just we're in the wrong. But if they do something, I mean, can you imagine if when I got pulled over on I-95 in my red Ferrari, if I would have had cocaine in the car and I looked at the officer and said, hey, it's White House cocaine. It's perfectly legal. I mean, can you imagine that? What would have occurred?
I can't imagine it for you, but I can imagine things like that happening to liberals. But here's the thing. Conservative values and parental rights is really what's key. And I know, Will, you agree with me. Paul, you agree with me. We support the right for parents to raise their child how they want to raise their child. We may not always agree. See, that's the thing about conservative views. We don't have to agree with you to agree to allow you to do what you want to do in your home. But the liberals on the other side, they want to force their agenda down our throat. And I'm saying you're welcome to do it. Just do it at home. And that's the difference.
Well, there's only so many hours a day for instruction.
Right.
And that's what we want the focus to be on. It's like you said, we're here for all children to learn, right? And that's what our mission, our core mission is to do, is to achieve academic excellence for all of our children. But these type of issues are things that should be, again, dealt with between the parent and the child. And the parent should always be aware of anything that affects their child, whether it's about sexuality or whatever. The parent needs to be involved.
And I'm going to tell you right now, I am grateful and thankful that my parents didn't allow my brother to choose a different identity when he was eating boogers and glue. I mean,
I don't even know how to comment on that.
Oh,
one.
you were probably eating boogers and glue when you were a little kid.
You know what? I did not eat glue.
You didn't eat glue?
I did not eat glue. If I would have,
I mean, because children are children, and we have to grow into whatever we believe ourselves to be. But the point is, we don't need the added extra help. I mean, we're dealing with stuff like social and emotional learning in school. We have teachers who aren't even qualified for that.
Right.
Well, Will, let me ask you this: you're a conservative here in Flagler County, and hold on, stop. What?
I wanted him to answer the social and emotional learning stuff.
Okay.
That's so important.
All right, go ahead. Back
Yeah.
to that.
So, we have a certain amount of mental health that's required, instruction required every year. And actually, during the last year, I started receiving emails from concerned parents about some of the topics and some of these modules that are online that that you may not be aware, a parent might not be aware of, right? And but one parent did notice it, and it was social emotional learning, but it kind of was pointing toward the CRT and and about putting yourself into identities as far as groups are concerned. And if you identify with this, then you should automatically adopt the values of that group you identify with, rather than finding common things in common. It was really trying to call out what's different about each other, right? And that was so we put up some. I put up some red flags there, and that was pulled. And actually, Governor DeSantis actually passed down a change in the social emotional learning. It's actually going to now a resiliency model.
Good.
Which I'm very pleased to that we're going in that direction, because we need to take away this idea that everybody's a victim. You know, we have to say, listen, you can be strong. Your circumstances today do not define your future, right? Today's the first day of the rest of your life. You are in control of, and you have to take personal responsibility for your actions.
And you can change. That goes down to me. I could preach on that. Look, I may have done it, but I'm not what I done. Right? I mean, everyone has an opportunity to grow and to learn and to be better.
You know, I have listeners in Orlando and their parents, they call in and they talk to us and they said, hey, we need you to do a show. The school's pushing this, or my child came home and looked at me and said, Mom, I'm gay. And the child was 9 years old, and the mother looked at her and said, what are you talking about? She said, well, my teacher said that I look like I'm a good candidate to be gay, and that I like girls. And she goes, I do like girls. But she was talking about friends, playing with them. They're getting so confused. And we've got areas like Orlando where people think, okay, we're going to give up and we're not going to worry about it. But there's some really strong conservatives that are there. It's a very great county. And everybody, when it comes down to it, wants to protect their kids. There's people out west that are pushing this. There's laws, like Pastor Jay said, that are starting to come across the state. We just had recently the vice president, if you want to call her that, come to Jacksonville and start saying and screaming and yelling that our governor was crazy and that we're being unfair in school and we're not teaching the correct things. I'm sitting there thinking to myself, this lady, I don't even know if she went to school. I think she got more education on the back seat of a sofa or a back seat of a car than she did in a school.
You just cut right to it, don't you, Joe?
It's ridiculous. Some of the stupid stuff that they're coming in and saying. And when it comes to my kids, I'm fired up, I'm angry, and I'm upset. Just recently, the Jason Aldean song. Look at all the controversy around that. And the man is singing about values and morals. But yet, if I turn around and say something that offends somebody and call them a he or a she, which is what I was taught to call them, or yes ma'am or no ma'am, which is what I was taught. That's being bad. I don't get it. And in a school district like this, how do you plan on keeping this stuff from piercing up in ours? Because this stuff is like an infection. I'm not going to say cancer, because last time I said cancer, liberals go, oh, he wants to cut our heads off. I'm going to say it's like an infection. It gets from one person to the next, and it becomes a problem. And it's going to hit our county if we don't build a barrier around it.
Well, what we're going to do is enforce the policies that we have and the new laws that have just come down. A lot of times it's not about placing new policy or new laws. It's just enforcing the ones you have on the books, right? And it just needs to be a will to do that. And I believe there's some consensus to that on our board as well, overall. But again, it really comes down to parent involvement as well, and them, being vocal about their concerns, and also people letting us know if they are witnessing these type of scenarios. We can't solve a problem if we don't know it's happening, right?
Well, you talk about being vocal, and I want to go with Pastor Jay on this.
Mm-hmm.
A few people were vocal about books that were here in Flagler County, and they got shunned. They got made fun of. They got called all kind of names. One of them was a school board member, and she got attacked viciously. And all she was doing is saying, this is inappropriate to have in our schools, and kids just randomly pick it up. We need to watch these books a little more. That is it. How is being vocal?
Well, here's the thing. I'm against banning books. I'm going to tell you that right now. However, I do believe that every school system, whoever's curating these books and putting things in, it needs to be age appropriate. It needs to be appropriate for children. And if you want your child to read a book that's sexually explicit, you need to have it at home. It does not need to be available to children who are not even at that age. Regardless of what kind of sex it is, you don't need that. And we're talking about books that were very, very graphic in what was happening in, the bedroom, whether it was heterosexual sex or a homosexual sex isn't the issue. The issue is third graders, fourth graders, fifth graders, or whatever should not read books that have pictures in it with penises and all kinds of other stuff and telling somebody what to do with it. It's not appropriate. That's not what school is for. I'm not against you allowing your child to read it, but you do it at home. My child isn't going to read it. And I don't want you to tell me I have to allow my child to read it either. So it's all about parental rights. It's all about parental rights. And those things are not banned in our public schools, our public libraries. We're talking about a public school system. And as parents and individuals, we have every right to decide what's curated and what's allowed in those systems.
Yeah, I've always said that a parent should have a reasonable expectation that their kids are going to have access to only age-appropriate materials when they come to school. They can't come and sift through every book in our library.
You might as well put the Playboys and the Hustlers on the books, because that's what it is.
Well, here's the thing about I've had book come before me to vote on, which was a book sold, and I read it, and the review panels allowed it to get all the way. The former superintendent allowed it to stay, so it was challenged to the board. And, this book depicted some graphic sexual circumstances. It involved human trafficking. And the argument was that it supported the curriculum, but it had very clear graphic depictions of sex and forced sex on a minor. And I just could not see how this would be appropriate in our schools. But unfortunately, I voted against that one. But the board majority kept it. But see, you have to also count some victories within. You're not always going to get 100% of what you want. But one victory there is we were able to keep it only in the high school and remove it from the middle school. Right. So, as a school board member, we have to find ways to have victories. It's not necessarily a loss because the vote didn't go your way. You can still have victories within that vote.
Paul, you're still there, right? Paul?
Say again, I'm sorry.
Okay, I want to make sure you're there because I want to pose the next question to you. Sorry about that, Candy. Give me some uttering process. So in Volusia County, Representative Webster Barnaby was in session during the time that there was a lot going on when it comes to the parental right bill. And he sat up there and he said some things, which, by the way, I'm going to tell you, Paul, I support. I absolutely support everything Representative Barnaby said. You got to remember, he was sitting there and people were parading. Men with dresses on and beards, little boys in little dresses, and they were coming out fighting, talking about the legislation is against LGBTQ. And no, we are just against sexuality within our school system and in the curriculum and things like that. So my question to you, because I know you support Representative Barnaby, has there been any blowback against that? It's made national news, by the way.
I want to say there was some initial, oh my goodness, to that from some folks. I want to say fortunately, most of it was not, out there in social media and public, but there, people that would reach out to people that they knew, either elected officials or party officials or whatever, with regard to that. And like you, my feeling is he was speaking, and my first question when somebody asked me that, because because people will do that with a baited question. And my first question was back to them, what was the context?
Yes.
And as you pointed out, the context was he and the rest of the session were listening to this for approximately 2 hours, all of these different people parading through and giving their opinions and being, I want to say, acting in some instances, as I understand it, inappropriately and speaking things that were inappropriate. But nonetheless, they were being listened to by our representatives and respectfully so. And then when the question was posed to him, all you saw on the news was no context, his response. But when you put that in context, all of a sudden, if any of us were sitting there listening to what he had to listen to, and all of them had to listen to for that long, undoubtedly, we would have had some kind of thing to be more specific to what was being confronted with.
Right.
And that's where I wholeheartedly support the fact that we need to not be feeling today like a unicorn.
Right.
You
And
can feel that way, and that's okay. But guess what? It doesn't mean we have to treat you like a unicorn or
right.
substitute that for anything else you want to substitute for. So
Right.
that's really the bottom line. to
So
all this.
we have,
And
go ahead, Paul, finish your thought because I have
No,
a question.
I was just going to say that my belief is the common sense element is what's missing. And when you put that into context in the common sense area, all of a sudden, all of this stuff becomes very evident and obvious that it's not something that is where our values as a majority of the population. And I'm saying that because there are a lot of people that may not vote conservatively, but they still have values that they follow through their faith, and ultimately those are things they know right and wrong. And in their minds, what's right and wrong is not what's being shoved down people's throats.
Paul, hold on just a second. Candy and Mark, can we go 30 more minutes with the show? Jess Thompson's going to call in. She said she wanted to call in. I want to bring her in. But I think this
ironically,
is a
I just
two-parter.
texted you, Joe, and said, okay, either wrap up if we're only going to do part one, then go ahead and wrap this up. If we're going to do a part two, then let's take a minute and
Yeah,
let whoever's
let's do
going to
that.
join,
Let's do
and
that.
whoever needs to go.
Can we do that, Mark? Is that okay? All right.
Okay.
Guys, this has been an incredible show. It's been phenomenal what we're talking about. You know, I totally believe that I think we've lost our mind as a nation, truthfully. But, you know,
I haven't.
again, as far as what's right or wrong, I'll tell people, pick up your Bible. For God's sakes, pick up your Bible and see what it answers all these questions. I mean, if you want to sit here and question the Bible and be a big fool like that, which I shouldn't have called my brother and sister a fool, I just broke a commandment. But if you want to question something like that, then have it on you. But don't question it and then start forcing all this stuff on other people, especially when a vice president who in an economy is almost wrecked, totally wrecked, is coming down to Jacksonville trying to be political right now and talk about our governor and talk about our morals and values that we want to keep in the state of Florida. Truth is we don't want her in Florida. We don't want her coming down here, if you really want to know the truth of it. But this has been so good. I want to move into a part two, and I want to ask, Will, would you be okay coming back next week and let's talk a little bit more? Because one thing I do want to do, I want to end it on a positive note, welcome the kids back to the schools, and let's have a great school year, because more than anything, we need to walk away from this conversation with kids excited coming back to school and parents.
Sure, absolutely.
Pastor Jay, if you can come back, and Paul Deering would love for you guys to come back. Let's do part two. Guys, we're going to wrap up this week, and I want everyone to enjoy the most beautiful place in the world. Get your last little vacations in, get your last things in. We're in the most beautiful state, in the most beautiful country in the world. And remember, live, work, shop, play, Florida. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next weekend with part two of the school board. All right, we ready?
All right, we are clear on that one. Do you want to just do a 3, 2, 1? Does anybody need a break
Hold on just
before
a
we
minute.
do?
Let me get Jess. She's
Are we just
texting
going
me.
to stick on the school thing? Because there's like 10 bills that I wanted to, not necessarily 10, we don't really have to talk about all of them, but one
Mark,
that
Mark,
the
what's the
left
number Jess
really
can call
don't
in?
like, the Democrats don't like, which are, and I probably could just really mention
She
that
can't
with
just
you,
call in?
Paul, about how we have a Republican House Senate and we have a Republican governor. That makes sense?
Mhm.
And how we're going to be moving forward in the
206.
next session. I would like to be able to try. Maybe that's probably what I'll do. What do you think,
9693.
Candy?
I think that's fine. I think whatever we're going to do on this one, Joe needs to introduce it on the front end so that we kind of have an idea of where we're going.
Okay, I
But as
also
far as
want.
what the actual topic is going to be, that's fine.
Okay, I also want to talk about the union busting too. That's a good one, because I guess we're gonna have Jessie on and we're gonna have Will on, and now because the union dues too for the
Right, they're not-
for the schools.
They're not being auto deducted anymore.
They're not being auto deducted anymore. So that's a big deal because our unions have had a huge impact on what they teach and what they do when it comes to our school system. So that's another bill that I want to talk about if we can talk about the teacher unions.
Yeah, the
All
other
right.
stuff that's on this list that I found was new restrictions on internet usage, meaning no using TikTok or on any school-owned device,
Yep.
no app that can be put on any privately owned device if it's connected to the school's internet.
Yep.
So basically, clubs and sports teams can no longer use TikTok or social
Uh-huh.
media to promote their activities.
Right.
And then the last one was the Florida Board of Education. This is just the last day or two, approving a new set of standards for how Black history will be taught in the state's public schools.
Which do you know
apparently
what
there's some
bill that one
controversy on
is?
as well.
Which bill is that one?
Which what?
The bill number, so I can look it up. Do you have
Oh,
it?
I don't know. It's literally in the news today because they're saying that DeSantis is making it like we did something for the slaves because they learned skills and trades as slaves.
When did he say that?
Something. That's what I'm saying. Seriously, go into Google or Yahoo
Oh,
or any
my
of them.
goodness.
It's all over the place. So you
All
shouldn't
right.
have any trouble
We're ready
finding
to
that
go.
one.
No, I
let's
gotta
go
look.
ahead
I
and
gotta
get
look
back.
this up. They're gonna talk
Well,
about some
you can
black
look it up
stuff.
while we're talking
And if
about
we can also get in there about
Look,
Oh, my
I'm
God.
black.
We
I'm
ain't turning
black.
this into
You didn't
a
know.
show like that. Now, come on. Let's stop. Collaborate and listen. I'm a brand
Okay,
new
the
DJ with a new
the difference between
addition.
you and me, I like to talk about facts with my opinion.
All right, let's go ahead and get it started. We can. This is good
Okay,
dialogue.
you
we
go
can
ahead.
do.
Pastor Jay, just remember about
Jess,
mentioning
are you
that
there?
the
Yeah, I'm here.
we have 2 seats coming up
Yeah,
in 24.
that's
right,
absolutely.
okay.
I
Yeah,
got
let's,
that on my
let's
list
talk
too.
about that as well. Hello, Florida. This is Joe Mullins of the Live Workshop Play Show, and good morning and good evening in some of our stations. We are listened to all over this beautiful nation. We have over 2 million listeners now with the Live Workshop Play Show. If you want to like our page, like it on Facebook, Live Workshop Play Florida. We'll be posting new show announcements. Also, if you are interested in being on the show, you've got a hot topic, come on here. This is a voice for people. This show, as a matter of fact, this weekend, we have got the voice of parents who are very concerned about the school start back. You know, we left it last year with a lot of battles fought. Some won, some lost, some we're not sure what happened to them. But you know, what's more important that we start this school year, we know which direction we're going on, and we focus on the number one task at hand, and that is our child's education, making sure that their future is set. We said a lot of good things last week. We're bringing back Will Furry from the Flagler County School Board.
Thanks for having me
Welcome,
back.
Will. We've also got Pastor Jay.
That's
Pastor
right.
Jay, thank you for coming on again and helping me co-host this show today. You know, if there is a mother in this community that has been more active, I would be shocked. You have done a phenomenal job. We also have Paul Deering, who is with the Volusia County Republican Executive Club, and I asked Paul to be on because they have fought a lot of these battles and brought a lot of this attention and support and really pushed these conservative politicians that are so-called conservative who get in there and don't do anything. They stay on their tails, and I really appreciate that. The clubs, there's the Orange County Republican Executive Club, there's the St. John's, there's the Duval, there's the Flagler, and these clubs are so crucial because this is where people get together. Guys, they're not little meeting places like some of the counties do, or let's go talk about each other. These are important and crucial. And Paul, thank you for coming back on as well.
Joe, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
You know, I got to give a shout out to
these-
me. You
holding
do
these-
know I was the past chair of the Republican Executive
You
Committee in the state of
absolutely
Florida.
were. Absolutely.
Let's throw that out there. Being the
Absolutely.
first black in the county, first black woman in the
Which
state
county?
of Florida.
Which
Flagler.
county? Flagler County.
Yeah.
Is that club
Yeah.
still even going?
Ha ha ha. Of course it is. We have a phenomenal chair.
Well,
I'm
the
kidding.
executive committee.
Yes.
Yeah,
We have a
I'm
phenomenal
picking.
chair.
I'm picking on her. They do, but it's important not just to go to these meetings, but to be a voice. And you know, we talked about it in our Right to Life show that we had just a few weeks ago, and Senator Scott, who just was on the week before last. We talked about these conservative politicians, quote unquote, people moving down. They're Democrat, and they're realizing the only way they win if they switch seats, which hence we have one here running for a city commission or a county commission. The old guy, Hans, he was a Democrat forever, and now all of a sudden he's going to run as Republican because he wants to try to win. That is deception at a level that is unbelievable. But, you know, one thing I want to say is this. We are very fortunate to have strong people. We also have a very special guest from Volusia County, another school board member, Jess Thompson. Jess, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. It's so great to be on here with such amazing people. I mean, Pastor Jay is truly one of my inspirational heroes. And Will, I mean, I can't get over how many times I love seeing Will's name in the paper just fighting a good fight. So it's a pleasure to be here.
And Jess, it's great to hear your voice. I haven't talked to you in a little while.
Excited. I'm very excited because I'm
Well, yeah.
telling you, she's shaking. She's kicking butt and taking names.
Well, you know,
over there.
Jess is in the forefront. She's got the big movement from Disney coming her way. So she is in there fighting. You know, that's what I tell people. Disney's just 1 or 2 counties over from us. It's not very far. And this stuff that they're pushing is coming this way, all this woke stuff and this crazy stuff. You know, we were talking about that, but one thing I'd like to do, and I'd like to bring it up, and I'd like, Pastor Jay, I'm going to kind of divert to you and let you kind of talk. But Jess, let's give a little update about Volusia County and some of the great things y'all have done to hold the ground for our kids and the future of our kids.
Yeah, I mean, and I thank God every day for it because I can't do it by myself. We've been fortunate to live in the great state of Florida where a lot of great bills did pass, and thankfully Volusia County hasn't been standing in the way. I know I emailed someone at the district a week ago, and I was like, listen, HB 1521 came out, and what that stated was that there had to be disciplinary actions in place for our restrooms. If you use the biologically incorrect restroom, there had to be discipline. And I searched our code of conduct, and I talked to many people around the state, and they did the same, and there was nothing there. There's nothing about the bathrooms. There's nothing about discipline. And I've talked to our district. I'm like, listen, guys, we have to do this. This is now state law. It has to get done. And it's been received very well. And so we'll be working on that, honestly, tomorrow and coming up, you know, in these next couple of weeks before school gets started. But as far as books, you know, I keep encouraging parents, like, if you want a book to be questioned, please do it. Please bring it to the school board, because if it's something that's sexually inappropriate, we'll get it out. And so I'm thankful for where we live, for the stuff that we've been able to do, because it makes it a lot easier compared to other states.
Just let me ask you, with the passing of all these different bills that's coming up, and I can pose this to both you and Will, are you finding easier to come up and put policies together in place, right? And how do you how do you get the information out there? Because a lot of parents aren't even aware of what's going on. Most of them don't watch the news. I mean, they're making a living for their children. It's not that they aren't engaged, but unless something comes through the school system, a lot of them don't know that there has been policy changes. A lot of parents didn't even know that that a child could use a different restroom other than what they were assigned as, you know, what they were born and assigned as birth. So how do you get the word out, and is it easier to put these policies together?
I would say, to answer the first question, yes, I think it's easier because, I mean, it's not me going in there. It's not me with my beliefs or my religion, which I feel like I've been attacked on different issues, but it is literally state law. This is what the state says. And, you know, we had Speaker Renner, who was at the forefront of moving bills through education. Obviously, Governor DeSantis helped so much. So I think it's easier. As far as parents not realizing, I mean, I'm going to be completely 1,000,000,1% honest. We have so many policies here in Volusia that were 30, 20 years old and so out of date. And I don't think parents realize that. And so 20, 30 years ago, the bathrooms weren't an issue. And even now, I mean, the policies haven't been changed yet, and there is nothing that says what bathroom you have to use, and there's no disciplinary course of action. And I don't think parents are aware of that. We have a lot of policies. I'll give it to you. It's not interesting reading if you're just sitting down to read, but I think parents should read it, but I do think they're starting to pay attention. I will say, after 2022, and so much attention was put on education and school boards, I feel that a lot more parents are paying attention. That being said, a lot of people who want to fight policy changes and fight what's happening in Florida with this huge movement in education, they're also reading. And I will say that my email inbox is constantly full of people with delightful views from the other side, I'll say.
You know, when you talk about the bathroom and the bathroom issue, this has gotten so ridiculous. I want to throw something out here. I was in Hawaii, and they had a bathroom. It was one big major bathroom, and men and women went in it. It had a sink, a common area where sinks could be, but then you go into the stall and you use the bathroom, you lock the door, and you come out. The other way is you see some of the national chains and the bigger places going family restroom, maybe we can't say family anymore. Maybe family's a bad word, but family restroom. And it's one bathroom, one toilet, one sink. You go in there and you come out. There's a solution there. All this stuff about my child gets to go into one that says women's. My child, this has gotten so ridiculous and is so out of hand. Just take the damn men and women's thing off the wall and put bathroom and let them use it. And then that way they can go in, or create them to, if the people want to pay for it and redo all these bathrooms, let them reconfigure them, let them spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, and let's see how much that value matters to them. Just put a bathroom, just one bathroom, one stall, one door, and just go in it and say family restroom or whatever.
Well, here's the problem, and I understand that, but there's an issue we don't talk enough about. We look at transgender, which is 0.04%.
Do they need a special toilet?
Let me say 0.04%. People who think that they're a girl or boy or whatever that's different than what they were born. And then we have the LGBTQ community. All of these are percentage, small percentage or under a percentage level. But there's 25%. When I hear this, 25% peer-to-peer sexual assault that goes on. In other words, people are being raped in restrooms. They're having issues and things like that. This has nothing to do with the LGBTQ community, has nothing to do with transgender, a statistic that's been around for so long, peer-to-peer sexual assault that's happening. So we've got to make sure that the restrooms are secure. We need to ensure and to make sure that our students are taken care of. And that's a huge issue for me because I have a child that was sexually assaulted in a Flagler School's restroom. So when you look at that, you want to be able to create a safe environment. So no, boys can't use girls' restrooms, girls can't use boys' restrooms, and if you think you something else, find another restroom where it's a secure, because we don't want them to be assaulted either. See, here's the thing. Am I right, Will?
Yeah, well, and it also would be a monumental cost to the school districts to make that type of retrofit. And but at the end of the day, it's my view that whatever gender you were assigned at birth, that is the bathroom that you should be using, and they shouldn't be mixed together.
I think I don't know if Flagler's the same way. I know I've talked to principals about this because, like I said, in Volusia, we have, as of this second in time, have no policy stating one way or the other. But I've talked to multiple principals about it who have had transgender students, and they have asked, they want the privacy. They don't want to feel assaulted when they go in whichever restroom they choose because they don't feel like they belong anywhere. And every single principal I spoke with has said they made accommodations where, Joe, like you said, there's basically one room restroom where they could go in, lock the door. It's just them, the toilet, a sink, and that's it. And then they walk out. And so they made it as safe as possible. And so those exist on, I want to say,
they exist. They exist in Flagler County as well, Jess.
That's a solution, and we're still, but they don't want a solution. They want to argue that they can go into something with a little dress symbol on it, and it's okay. And my point is, we don't care if you go in there or not. I've been in a women's bathroom when I had to pee real bad.
Were you in there by yourself?
It was a single stall women's bathroom. I went in and used the restroom. So I've been in there. As a child, I used to go in there, but I don't make a big deal out of it. And these clowns are getting ridiculous.
Okay, well, here's the thing, and I don't know if it has changed in Flagler County, is that at the schools, they would have to go request a key to go use the single-use stall and the single-use restrooms, which puts a child out of they should not have to request a key. Because I have had children that wanted to go and request a key, not because they were transgender, not because they were LGBTQ, just because they wanted the privacy, and every child should have access to privacy.
I'm going to go
no
back
opposition
to something.
to that.
I'm going to go back to
Right.
something. Jess will not understand this, but Paul, you will.
Uh-oh. Here
Will,
we
you
go.
will, and Pastor Jay, you will.
It's an age
If
thing.
they keep this up, I think we should go back to the quarter bathrooms where you have to put a quarter in the door and go in. And that way we see if, we just go to one single bathroom, you put a quarter in and you go into it. For my listeners that are under the age of 40, yes, we grew up. And our biggest issue with bathrooms is that we had to put a quarter in the door. They had a little change thing on it to get access to go use the restroom.
I don't recall. I must not be that old.
You're not that old.
You're not
so,
that old,
so
Kathy.
you're with Jess. You're with
Listen,
Jess
you know
as
what
well.
they say, black don't crack and brown don't frown. I don't know what you're talking about.
Let's talk about some positive things. I'd like to hear some positive updates. You know, it's
Let's-
very exciting. Our kids are getting to go back to school.
They're going back to school. And what's positive right now is we have a conservative movement here in the state of Florida. We have majority Republican House, majority Republican Senate, and we have a Republican governor. And to me, that's positive, and that's great news. Paul, and I think we're going to increase that number. In fact, we have District 3 in Flagler County Schools and District 5 in Flagler County Schools, where we are looking for conservative candidates for District 3 and District 5.
One of them's been in there for like 50 years, and she needs to go. She's very liberal. The other one is Rhino, and she calls herself a conservative, but yet she has voted more liberal
She voted for the
movements.
mask. She voted to
I'm
retain books
and that's
that
me
have sexual
saying it.
explicit
That's
content.
me saying it on my show, and I'm giving it. We need two strong people there. Jess, do you guys or let me ask Paul this, because I don't want to put Jess in the hot seat. But Paul, do y'all have some seats down in Volusia that are coming open that are important that we need to work on getting some strong people in?
Yes, we do. Actually, Joe, this coming election cycle we have in Districts 2 and District 4 are both up, and both are occupied currently by Democrats. And I think the governor has made them a priority, as he has in many counties, that we look to get conservatives, Republicans in there. And basically, at the end of the day, we need people who will, I want to say, put parental rights in the mix on everything. I mean, when it comes right down to it. And it's a mentality that the state, if you will, or in this case, the school board as the local part of the state that affects the students, as the school board isn't the end all. The school board is there to facilitate good things for parents, kids, and teachers. And at the end of the day, if they do their job, and if we have a good majority of conservatives, we had in this last election, we had a number of good folks running for and conservatives as well as liberals that were running in the races for school board. However, we were blessed to have Jessie come out with the victory in District 3, and she espoused not just I want to say good parental things. She's had been a parent, a PTA president, and so on, and very, very involved, but also a very strong conservative set of values. And those are the things that we need in our elected officials, especially at the school board level, so that we can know that we can reach out to them. That's really the key. So anyway, that's where I am on that.
Will, there was a bill that came through that stopped the automatic deduction for teacher unions. Let's talk about that, because the teacher unions, most people don't realize, have been done quite a bit of things when it comes to what they want to enforce and the policies that they want and the agendas. Teacher unions have their own agenda. And I know Rebecca Friedrichs, I can't remember what state she's in. I believe she's out of California, where she actually was one of the ones that really stopped teacher unions where it was mandatory. So here in the state of Florida, and in fact, she had that, she was the executive producer of that movie, Whose Children Are They? Because teacher unions have really been hijacked in our school system. So for the first time that I know of in the state of Florida, that those automatic deductions aren't coming out, teacher salaries. So how is that, Will, do you think it's going to affect us here?
Well, it's going to depend on how much participation the unions have amongst their members, right? There is a certain percentage that they have to maintain, and this was really designed to free up the paychecks of teachers, right? To not have them have this auto deduction from their paycheck. If that teacher finds value in that union for them, they can write the check or set up an auto debit directly with the union, right? But the challenges with the union is that one, all of our teachers now are on annual contracts, right? But we do have some grandfathered and tenured teachers that they mostly bargain for, and they want to bargain every dollar we have. If there's any extra left over, we have to bargain with them. It's just part of their existence right now. But they do need to maintain a certain level of participation in order to exist. So we'll see how that plays out in the new fiscal year.
Jessie, back in January, I saw where there were about, at least I want to say about 7 or 8 counties, superintendents of schools had to go and had to talk about why they had not given the raises, hadn't given the money that Governor DeSantis had given. You remember that? And
Yeah, we were one of them.
you were one of them. Flagler County was one of them too.
Yes, we
And
were.
the top-notch reason why they had not given the teachers the raises and the money that the Governor DeSantis had released for the school teachers, and our county was there, was because of what? Teacher unions. They hadn't finished negotiation with teacher unions.
Yeah, and we actually, that was one of the things, and I told the rest of my board, I was like, I have zero problem going to impasse if they're being unreasonable. I know that's not a popular opinion, but that's where we we didn't get our money out. Good Lord, I want to say it was like March or April, which is ridiculous. Those teachers have already taught pretty much all year. And so this year we went in, I think it was like a month or so ago, kind of starting to get our minds wrapped around it. And it's like, why can't we get our teachers the money when they start teaching this year? Like, we start school, let's let the teachers have the money that our governor and our legislation has says these teachers need. And so we've started negotiations early, and we want to get this money out. We have 3 unions up here, and one of our unions already, negotiated through, and the teachers union isn't that one. We're still working on that one, but we're trying really hard because I'm very pro parental rights, but we have a lot of really good teachers, and to be quite frank, they get screwed over by the union repeatedly. I don't even know if they're aware.
TikTok has been huge. Everybody likes, I don't have TikTok, just by the way, but you don't have do you have TikTok, Paul? No, you don't have TikTok. But I know in Flagler County, we actually had a teacher be dismissed because she was doing TikTok videos with a song I felt like was inappropriate, was doing a TikTok video inside of a classroom. And it had a curse word in it. And she had all these TikToks and had them all over TikTok, and she was dismissed. Well, now we have legislation that no TikTok is allowed. How do you guys feel about that?
Well, I think the removal of as much social media as we can from our young children's lives is a good thing. There's many studies that are showing that our kids are suffering from mental health, body image issues, bullying. All these things are happening because of social media, and the less that they have it in their hands is the better. But especially at school, because it's a distraction from learning. Right?
But they've been using it to promote sporting events and their clubs and
not anymore. Not TikTok. TikTok it's already been announced that if you have TikTok, delete it from your phone. It will not be accessible on our district internet, district wide. So of course, people they have their own devices. They can have their regular internet service, but as far as Flagler Schools devices and our internet connection, they will not have access. You guys already put them.
How about in Volusia County, Jessie? Are you getting any pushback? People saying we want TikTok?
No, and it's funny. So our Habitat for Humanity up here does a summer camp, and last week I went to speak to a big group of middle school and high school students, and I was sharing with them things on the school board level, which were kind of boring. And I was like, let me talk to you. What do you all see? And it's funny you mentioned a teacher with the TikTok video, because one of the students in 8th grade, she told me, she's like, I don't think it's fair that we're not going to be allowed to have the social media on our phones. That's not fair. And I was like, well, don't you think that it's going to stop some of these fights and some of these issues? And that's the path I was going. And she goes, no, it's not fair, because our teachers are the ones on TikTok. And that blew me away. And it was one of those aha moments where, you know what, you're right. Let's talk about this. And it was such a great bonding experience, but we constantly think about students doing this, students doing that. And trust me, they are. But there's the whole other side of that coin, where you do have teachers making these videos, promoting these things, and sometimes teachers make these videos that are inappropriate, whether it's the music, whether it's what they're doing, what they're wearing. And a lot of our students, whether they'll admit it or not, look up to these teachers. And, what exactly are our teachers promoting to our students? So I'm happy about it. I haven't gotten any pushback yet from teachers, from parents, but the school year hasn't started. As we all know, that's usually when people realize what's happening.
I think so. I think their TikTok and social media, as we've all kind of talked about, has gotten out of hand. People tend to say things that they wouldn't say to people's faces on that. They tend to do things. I had to sit down with my son this summer and talk to him about social media. It was, what is the Snapchat. He thought he was talking to another child his age, and the person was trying to get him to send inappropriate pictures, and he wouldn't do it. He came to me and he said, "Dad, this is really weird," and I picked up the thing and kind of dialogued with it. Found out it was a grown man from South Africa that was trying to get him to send pictures inappropriately, posing as a girl, and then he was trying to extort money. And I lit him up. I tell you, he'll never reach on that again. I actually called the thing. I figured out how to call it and called him, and I was going crazy on him. But at the end of the day, one of the kids that goes to Flagler schools in the Flagler and Volusia is really good for this, came up and said, we learned that in school, that there's all kind of con things and things like that. And I think that's what we need to start focusing on, is protecting our kids from this and not just throwing the avenue of exposure to this. Because my son, who came from Georgia, who they tend in that school district want to not talk about these things, and they want to just shut them down, and they want to try to, like Paul said, be good Republicans and keep their mouth shut and just do what they're supposed to do. That, which isn't, we're not in that day and time. You've got to speak up, you got to fight, and you got to have people like Will, you got to have people like Pastor Jay. You got to have people like Jess and Paul that are fighting hard. And in other counties, we got some great ones in Orange County, Duval, that are fighting for these kids. But at the end of the day, I want my kids to learn about how to protect themselves from this stuff, not be exposed.
And I'll tell you that in Flagler County and in other counties too, you really, if you're a conservative, you can't just trust the R behind somebody's name. You have to do your research.
Yes.
There you go.
And because there are people
Especially if they're in office.
Absolutely
Find out
right.
how they voted.
you want to see, did they just turn their party affiliation over shortly before that election? You need to if they have been elected, look at their voting record. That is what's going to tell you the type of person how they're going to lead. And we have District 5 and District 3 coming up in 24. And mind you, I'm only mentioning that because they have publicly said they're not running again. So, I mean,
I heard it was because that crazy group called the Pachyderms.
well, whatever the reason is,
It was in print. They put it out.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
whatever the reason is, they've publicly announced that they're not running. Of course, they could change their mind, but if that's the case, then if there's people out there that really had thought, hey, maybe it's time for me to throw my hat in the ring, you might want to start preparing for that now. And if you have any questions about what it's like to run, I'm happy to share with you my experience.
And if you need any guidance, I'll be happy to help you.
Yeah. So I just putting that out there.
Or reach out to the Republican executive clubs and talk to them and tell them you're interested. Guys, I'll tell you right now, God is calling for warriors to stand and fight. This isn't a time in our society where we sit back and we turn our cheeks and we duck our heads and think it's going to go away. It's not going away. It's getting worse. It's growing. It's truly like a cancer. Unless we do something about it, it is going to overtake and destroy this nation, destroy the future, and it's going to destroy our kids. And that's something that is not on the bargaining table in my house. And I'm sure that is the same with you, Will, Pastor Jay, Jess,
And
Paul. We are not going to negotiate with our future of our kids.
And we're not. And you mentioned the Bible, and there's a story in the Bible to talk about how God is always looking for someone who's going to rise up, who's going to go, who's going to say something. And if he doesn't, he works through people. God has chosen to work through people. And it's a time and a season where he's working through us, right? And right now it may just be conservative Republicans, but it could be people anywhere. It doesn't matter what your title is or where you are. He wants to use you, want you to pray, want you to stand up for what's right, because we're living in a day and age where wrong is right and right is wrong. And we've got to stand for something, right?
I agree, and I'll say this. I'll go on and say this too. When a Republican and a conservative is standing up and they're fighting, don't scatter and run when the media calls them out or attacks them. Come to their aid. I look back at King David. I look at King David. The man wasn't perfect. Can you imagine social media attacking him today? I mean, I'm sure if there were red Ferraris back then, King David would be flying up the interstate in a red Ferrari.
No, that was probably King Solomon. He'd have been in it.
King Solomon would have been in a. He would have been definitely been in one. But my point is, when these people are defending and fighting, I see Will fighting, I see Jess fighting. Don't sit there and go, well, they've got it, I don't have to do anything. get their backs, get
Yeah.
behind them. Paul, when people like Paul, who's with the Republican Executive Club of Volusia, when they're going out and they're fighting for a mission, get behind them. Today is the day that we need to stand, we need to fight, and we have to win. At all costs, we've got to win. I hope our governor doesn't leave the state of Florida. We got more work that he needs to be doing. I'm praying that he kind of sees the light and says, hey, I need to stay in Florida a little bit more because we need him. I can't imagine somebody coming in and taking his place, although I'd love to see him as president
Why don't you
one
run
day.
for governor?
You know what? I think the thing I'm going to run for right now is I'm going to run for a lunch because
I run
we've
for the
got some of the
refrigerator.
best food in the world in Florida. And you guys know that I've been too long and not eaten, so I'm ready to go. Orlando, Jacksonville, Volusia, Flagler, St. John's. Guys, remember, this is our school system. This is our kids. This is our future. It's our state. I don't care where a vice president, a president, or anybody comes into this state and starts saying that we're doing wrong. This is our state. And you know what? Right now, it is so profitable. As me as a commissioner on national committees, I fought hard to bring our money back to Florida, and every state in the country was trying to get that piece back from us, take our money, because they shut down and they fell into the woke stuff. And guys, we've lost our West Coast, we've lost Seattle, we've lost some of our Chicago. I mean, these cities, is unbelievable what's going on in them. We do not want that to come to Florida. And you know that when I was growing up, there was an old trend, guys, that they said things happen out west and it's about 4 or 5 years later the fashion hits us and the style starts. I don't want that with what's going on out west. I don't want 4 or 5 years Flagler County, Volusia County, St. John's, Duval, or Orange County, Seminole County to be like it is out west. I don't want homeless walking everywhere. I don't want drugs freely used. And I don't
BCs
want
in the
our
street.
kids. Yeah, I do not want that. And I'm saying we need to stand and preserve this state with great leaders like you, Will. Thank you for what you do. Paul, thank you for what you do. Jess, thank you for what you do at the Volusia County School Board. And Pastor Jay, thank you for what you do all over.
And I gotta say, happy birthday.
Oh, yeah.
It's your birthday. It's your birthday. It's your birthday.
but that doesn't. This show will air afterwards.
It's going after your birthday.
But you know
Okay.
what? We're recording. Everybody knows I pre-record the show. I'm very boisterous, and just 2 days is my birthday, so I turned the magical age of 53. Very excited and just glad to be here on this earth, and very glad to be in the fighting for the radio and fighting for our voices. And again, if you have things that you want to talk about and bring on this show, don't feel like you have to submit to them. Come on the show. Call me. Reach out on Facebook. Reach out to Will with the school board if you're interested with having more voice for your kids. Reach out to Pastor Jay.
TodayWithPastorJ.com.
Today with Pastor Jay. Reach out to Paul Deering with the Volusia County Executive Club, and then also Jess Thompson. Yep, Jess Thompson with Volusia County as well. Guys, remember, this is the greatest state, Volusia County School Board. This is the greatest state in the greatest country in the world. Remember, live, work, shop, play, and let's get educated the right way in Florida. Have a great weekend. Thank
Sorry,
you, guys.
Joe, you were 7 minutes over. So I
That's
got
okay.
7
You
It
can
minutes.
wasn't
edit.
me
You can
because
edit.
I'm
You
gonna
can
tell
edit
you
a
right
little of it
now.
out if you need to.
I already gave him the thing. Like it was at 3:40. I turned it back over
Yeah,
to
but
him.
I like getting a little more because somehow she calls me in a week and says, we're 2 minutes short. You need to go. I need you to stop
Well,
what
yeah,
you're
I
doing.
let you go over because once I take out the crap that you really don't want airing, what's left is not always.
She censors me. She censors me.
I love
Yeah,
Candy.
She does. She
She
censors
does.
me, but that's okay. All right. Jess, thank you.
Anyway,
Paul,
thank you guys
so
for
much.
everything. I think
Yeah.
we got it. Mark, are we good on that end?
Will, great job.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
I'm good.
All right.
Appreciate
Thank
you.
everyone. I will send this out as soon as I get everything with it taken care of.
I'll send
All right.
everybody
Thank
the
you,
show
guys.
announcement where it'll have their picture or your name on there. Okay?
Thanks,
All right.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Thanks, all.